Hi, this is Chase Cunningham or Dr. Cunningham or Dr. Zero Trust if you're onto the social thing. Anyway, let's start kind of cranking through a very interesting report, which doesn't make me feel good about what's going on in 2026 from Spec Ops. This is the breached password report. So let's crawl through this sucker. Analyzing a year's worth of malware stolen credentials. Okay, so from actual like theft sort of stuff. Report highlights 6 billion passwords stolen in a 12-month period. Sure, top stealer was Luma C2 with 60 million. 8-character passwords remain the most commonly stolen. Yikes. Top 3 stolen password links, 8, 10, and 9. Most common found in there, admin, guest, Cisco, and hello. Top 5 stolen passwords, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Admin and password are in there as well. So there we go. Verizon data breach investigation report, credential account abuse was 22% of confirmed breaches, while 54% of ransomware victims had their domains appear in credential dumps, and 40% had corporate email addresses exposed. Yes. These findings reinforce a persistent reality. Passwords are one of the most exposed and abused elements of enterprise security still in 2026. Yeah. Reflected in broader intrusion data, with identity-based attacks accounting for 30% of intrusions in 2025, according to IBM X-Force. Now, just one thing to take away right there is like, look, you've got Verizon 2025 Diver that says 22, IBM X-Force says 30. Split the difference, call it, 27-ish%, but just be aware that that's how this stuff works. Weak passwords. Across the 6 billion stolen passwords analyzed, weak and predictable patterns continue to dominate in 2026. Despite years of awareness training and increasingly complex password policies, the most commonly stolen, and there they are, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, admin and password. Yeah. These passwords are easy to guess. Yes, duh. So don't use those passwords. Common base terms and predictable password structures. Most common 6-character base terms: QWERTY, secret, AZERTY. Well, that's a slightly different one. Most common 7-base character base terms: welcome, student. And then most common 8-character base password admin, SP, and Pakistan for some reason. Okay. Regional, Pakistan at 123, India at 123, Nepal at 123, and then Senha, which is Portuguese for password. Hola, which is a Spanish greeting. Hola, you are pwned. Most common base terms: Kumar, Rahul, Rohit, Amit, Akash. Okay. And then password length. If you look at the number of times found, 6 is pretty common, 7, yeah. And then most commonly stolen password phrases within that. Just go look. Not hard to, it's comically simple and sad. Yes. So I won't go through too much of this because it's pretty simplistic, but you have to be absolutely just ignoring the reality of the space to not understand the problem that you have here. And look, it's not hard to put an extension on your machine or to use a password manager. And it doesn't matter which one. Just pick one and use it, because they're going to be better than you are at managing passwords and keeping people from, being hacked with simple stuff. Not rocket science. All right. Since we're doing more stuff, let's follow on and jump into another report, which is very, very interesting here, from Lumu, Lumu. This is their compromise report for 2026. This is a great one. I read this every year. So let's look at this a little bit here. Executive summary. If 2025 proved anything, is that the adversary is no longer a static target. Sure, they are Hydra. Yes, cut off one head and 2 grow back. The compromise report analyzed a year defined not by the malware that the cybersecurity community brought down, but the resilience of the threats that survived. Great point to make. Major takedowns of gangs like Lotbit, Luma, Quackbot provided only temporary silence. Yes. In their wake, a fractured, decentralized ecosystem emerged, trading brute force for invisibility. That's well put. Very eloquent there. The data reveals a strategic pivot. Attackers have abandoned loud breaches for low and slow evasion, mastering living off the land tactics and hiding in the very tools that you trust. Yes. They might use VPNs, legitimate traffic, or encrypted DNS. Yes, a piece of brownie. We no longer look for the enemy at the gate. We must assume they're already inside. That sounds like Zero Trust. If only there was some stuff about that out there. From Lumu, this document is not a retrospective. It's a battle plan. We dissect the anatomy of these new invisible threats, from the gatekeepers like Kataro to the assassins like Death Ransom. We outline the only defensive posture capable of defeating them. Continuous compromise assessment, which is trademark, but Okay, sure. There's a message from the CEO, Ricardo, super nice guy. If you don't know him, go talk to him. He's always got a smile on his face. One of the nicest people you could ever meet. Their whole team at Lumu is actually really awesome. Just good people. Okay, so 2025 proved that the adversary is resilient. Major takedowns of Lumu and Quackbot, or Luma, sorry, Lumu, Luma and Quackbot provided only temporary relief. The data from 2025 shows the adversary did not just survive, it adapted and grew stronger. So attackers mastered living off the land, camouflaging their activity with legitimate tools and network noise. They traded brute force for behavioral evasion, favoring anonymizers, DNS tunneling, and AI-generated domains. Absolutely. So let's look at the top 5 malicious IOC types. And actually, Lumu acquired a company called Multiverse. So this is multiverse threat intelligence stuff combined with Lumu's stuff. So you get some more deep insight here. So you can see anonymization is a big deal. People kind of making themselves harder to detect and those types of things, phishing, bot abuse, and regular sort of legacy attacker stuff. But anonymization definitely picking up. How are they making themselves anonymous? Well, Tor, number one. NordVPN, nice of them to use a product that's sold to us. Proton VPN, which everybody probably uses. Tunnelbear and Surfshark. So the stuff that we're supposed to use for security purposes being used by the bad guys for their own security purposes. Super awesome. Top 5 sectors targeted by Tor and VPNs: education, huge; telecoms, government, hospitality, financial services. I think this is very interesting, and Lumu did some good analysis here, just because if you put this down 5 years ago, it would have been the opposite way, right? You would have had financial services, then retail, then government, then telecoms, education. Here, now you can see that the adversary has changed their tactics because they're not going where it's difficult anymore, and they're going after easy stuff, so they go for unsecured environments like education. Droppers and downloaders, top 10 droppers: Kataro, Clearfake, fake updates, Trojan downloader, Quackbot. Yeah. Despite the major Quackbot takedown, the U.S. residual activity remains, proving you cannot kill a threat simply by seizing a server, which is what I say every time I see somebody say, we took them down. You didn't take them down, you just pissed them off. However, the most significant evolution in 2025 is the pivot to infrastructure abuse. The top threat, Kataro, isn't malware at all. Kataro was a dropper most detected by Lumu in 2025. It is a legitimate traffic distribution system, or TDS, used by marketers to route web traffic. So marketers are doing bad marketing stuff or something. Attackers have weaponized it to create a velvet rope for malware. Attackers use Kataro to profile incoming connections. Oh, so now I see how they flipped that. Okay, cool. If a user is a security researcher or a bot, Kataro routes them to a harmless Wikipedia page. If the user is a targeted victim IP, they are routed to the exploit kit. This is the ultimate form of living off the land, using commercial-grade marketing tools to make attacks invisible to automated scanners. That's pretty brilliant. I hadn't really heard of that tactic, but well done, Kataro people, because it makes tons of sense. The data reveals a calculated assault on the education sector. Kataro's prevalence here is not accidental. It exploits the open BYOD nature of universities. Attackers use those high bandwidth, low security environments as testing grounds and launch pads. And again, if you took this data from this particular analysis and you put it down 5 years ago, it would be the inverse. So you can track how adversaries change their tactics based on this type of information. Lots of United States for Kataro, 60%. Canada 1.6, and I like how the button's in like the middle of where there's literally no people in Canada, and then Mexico 32.8. LATAM, Dominican Republic 16%, Puerto Rico 12, Guatemala 37, Costa Rica 8, and Panama 12. And then Colombia, you've got 23, Ecuador 8, Brazil 23, Argentina 28, Chile 9.6. So you can see the focus shifts to economic powerhouses, Argentina, Brazil, and Colombia, where attackers filter for users of specific regional banking, because that's kind of where they want to go, where the money is. Info stealers, top 10: Luma Stealer, Magento Core, Remo, Ramit, Trojan Stealer, LokiBot, VDAR, Atomic, Xloader, and Ursuloader. Luma is still the most dominant. The landscape shifted to include new financial credential stealers like Magneto Core, Remo, and Ramit. The info stealer market is very quick to fill any vacuum because it works and it's pretty simple. Top 10 sectors: telecoms, education, government, finance, pro services. Yikes. Ransomware, the deadly blow. Death ransom, 50%. Wow. Interlock, 11. Maze, 7. Artemis, 5. Pay to key, 3. Eldorado, 3-ish, 2.5. Stop, Kraken, and CryptoLocker and Akira are all about a percentage. So just changes there. Ransomware by sector: telecoms 24%, education 23%, government 14%, financial services 8%, and pro services 7%. The lowest actually for ransomware by sector worldwide is media. So I guess because their IP is not so, call it, directly viable. But if I was a bad guy, and I'm just pontificating here, and I wanted to really get paid, I would probably go after like movie studios that have crappy security and are getting ready to release stuff where it would really hurt their bottom line. Don't do that, bad guys. It's just a thought. Let's look a little bit more at the Americas. Top 5 sectors in America for info stealers: telecoms, education, government. Yeah, makes tons of sense. Top 5 sectors by ransomware: education, telecoms, pro services, financial services, then government. And almost all of them were death ransom, according to Lumu's analysis. Let's see, Central America and the Caribbean is a little bit different. More government than telecoms, then retail. Education is at the bottom, which is interesting there. And then follow on to South America. Looks very much like the other side: telecoms, government, education. Well, education is third instead of fifth. And then you can look at the top MITRE attack techniques, which is good because everybody's always trying to figure out where you map to MITRE. So it's good that they included this. Top MITRE tactics: defense evasion, discovery, command and control, execution, initial access, privilege, collection, credential access, persistence, exfiltration. The stuff's pretty common and clean there. But I mean, if you really back up for a second and look at this logically, what are the things that I, as a defender, could affect? Well, I could affect privilege escalation. Yes, totally. I could affect initial access to a degree. The execution, somebody's always going to come up with new malware. Command and control, I can put controls in place in my network and infrastructure that should stop stuff from going outbound. So that's there. Discovery, I can never stop people from discovering things online because that's just what the internet does. And then I could also affect credential access with things like not crappy passwords and persistence and exfiltration. So there are things that you could control. Don't look at these numbers and feel like it's possible to have a better position. Top 5 defense evasion techniques: process injection, file deletion, removal of the indicator on the host, modifying the registry, and system checks. And those are all per MITRE. And then finally, command and control tactics. So how do they do this? Application layer protocol, tool transfer, cryptography, multi-hop proxies, and web protocols. Pretty simple. So here's the last bit, which is data from Lumu's behavioral detections, and this is driven by an artificial intelligence engine. So the following data represents not what we stopped at the gate, but we found already inside. That's very good that Lumu included that, because they're not saying they stopped stuff at the gate. They're saying that we found things that were already there, and this is what was already there. Threats that already had bypassed firewalls, EDRs, and secure gateways, right? So malicious behavior, phishing domains, emerging threats. But interestingly enough, TunnelBear, Proton, Kataro, and Nord were all in there already. Tor nodes were already in there, and generic Trojans. So if you see anything that says TunnelBear, Proton, or Nord in your network, you should probably go do a little bit of investigation. And the real question you should ask: if I can't see that, how do I know that we have a problem? So good question to ask. I will put the link to this report up in here, but just go look up LUMU. It's a pretty solid piece of analysis, and it's pretty nonpartisan, to be perfectly frank. They did a good job with it. Cybersecurity.com: the thin line between saving a company and funding a crime. Ransomware negotiators dish on being in a moral gray zone, unrestricted by accountability or industry-wide rules of engagement. And this is good because I just covered this with Curtis Minder, who's one of the best guys you'll ever meet, talking about this stuff. So ransomware negotiation is a dark but widely acknowledged reality in the cybersecurity industry, one that many argue is a necessary practice, even if it largely occurs out of sight. Brokering payments and terms with cybercriminals who hold organizations' data and organizations hostage places security professionals in a fraught position that requires them to balance their responsibility to meet their clients' needs without fueling the spread of financially motivated crime. It's a difficult thing. Here's some stuff from their actual ransomware negotiation people. Quote: there's no structured community of practice, no peer review, no recognized body to certify or hold negotiators accountable, says John DiMaggio, principal at Exfil Cyber. Quote: it's one of the few areas of cybersecurity with no real standards and unregulated tradecraft that still operates like the Wild West. Well, I mean, you kind of have to, because that's just how it operates. But yeah, it's a good point. This uneven approach manifests across the landscape, particularly among the top incident response firms, which have varying levels of comfort with ransomware negotiations. CrowdStrike and Mandiant draw a firm line, refraining from providing ransomware negotiation services to clients. Interesting that they don't do that. If a client is considering paying a ransomware group, Mandiant will explain the options and let the client decide. The Google-owned company will also share what it knows about the group's reputation for honoring terms, providing a list of third-party vendors that specialize in those negotiations. Adam Myers, head of counter adversary operations at CrowdStrike, is firmly in the don't pay ransoms camp, but he recognizes it's always not that simple. Good for him. That's fair. Quote: no good comes from paying them, end quote. But sometimes in extreme cases, when the choice between a business downfall and potentially putting the people you serve at risk of significant harm, victims don't have a choice but to pay the ransom, Myers said. Palo Alto Networks Unit 42 takes things to the finishing line but stops before payment. Quote, the boundary for us is we don't perform ransomware payments. That's actually an intentional decision on our end to separate those out, said Steve Elevitz, Vice President of Consulting at Unit 42. Quote, we will perform negotiations when requested by our clients, but we will not perform the payments. Okay, fine. Again, quote, there's the complexity side of it, but there's also just the moral side of it, not want to be involved really in the transaction itself. Yeah. I won't read through this whole article, but it's definitely a good one. If you have time, go look it up. Tactics define the process for negotiation, financial incentives, present ethical challenges. Basically, the sum of that is a lot of that money goes to do bad things in bad places, and people don't want to be affiliated with it. But it's also if my business that has 30 employees is going to be out of business and they can't feed their families or whatever anymore, what does my moral compass sort of say about paying that ransomware operator off? Because I need to keep us operational. Is my money maybe going to be used for something malicious or nefarious? And is that my problem morally? Like, there's some really good questions to have here. I think people should start to ask themselves these questions. And if you're not familiar with these questions, you need to look up people like Curtis Mender and go talk to them because they know how to answer and deal with those questions as well. Okay, and this is Reuters, their cybersecurity coverage, but some interesting headlines here. WhatsApp unveils high security mode, latest tech firm to offer users stronger protection. Okay, but yeah, stronger protection against hacking for more restrictive experience. Then your software is kind of not cool if it's making things more miserable. Like there's better ways to do that, but anyway. Yeah, Nike says it's investigating a possible data breach. Anytime someone says possible, it means probable. So start your clocks. And oh, by the way, that's definitely going to be a bar of the breach operation. So keep an eye on that one. Um, let's see. Russian military intelligence hackers likely behind December cyber attack on Polish energy targets. You think? And then finally, the EU plan to phase out high-risk tech draws fire from China's Huawei. Gosh, well, why would they not want you to pull them out of there? I mean, shocker. It's hard to figure that one out. And Verizon offers a $20 credit to customers that were affected by the massive wireless outage. So they bill you a few $100s a month and they're going to give you $20 back, even though their revenue was in the hundreds of billions of dollars. Thank you, Verizon. How very generous of you. And finally, in cyber news, so there's a lot of good articles here. Pinterest laying off 15% of staff because of AI. Now, obviously, whoever's doing that's not reading some of the other reports that are coming out. That's CEOs from other companies that laid off people because of AI that are going, oh shit, we need those people back. Yeah. What's up? Adversaries. And finally, North Korea is turning open source projects into malware traps. Not necessarily new, but some different versions of what's going on here. So, North Korea is doubling down on a familiar playbook by weaponizing trust in open source software and developer workflows. The latest campaign builds on techniques seen in previous DPRK-linked fake recruiter and supply chain attacks, but focus shifting to VS Code automation and disguised font files. Yes, dubbed the fake font campaign. This iteration used malicious .vs Code task.json configurations to trigger JavaScript payloads disguised as web front files, which is a .woff2 thing. Whenever a target opens a repository in VS Code, the techniques allow the malware to run silently and deliver a multi-stage infection chain, culminating in a persistent backdoor known as invisible ferret. Jesus, where do we come up with these names? The campaign begins with social engineering, so there's a fix. Attackers pose as recruiters from cryptocurrency or fintech on platform like LinkedIn and lure engineers with enticing job assessments. Okay, yeah, but they're old stuff 101. Targets are sent links to GitHub repositories that appear to be legitimate web apps, complete with a React front-end, Node backend, and proper README files. Behind the scenes, however, hidden task automation scripts execute obfuscated malicious JavaScript the moment the project is open. Once launched, the malware uses a multi-stage loader to establish persistence across Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. The final payload, Invisible Ferret, name, is a Python-based backdoor that can steal credentials from more than a dozen crypto wallet extensions, including MetaMask, Phantom, and Coinbase Wallet, as well as harvest browser creds, log keystrokes, and hijack cryptocurrency addresses in the clipboard. This is an escalation of other DPRK campaigns, but let's be real about this. Okay, number one, browser isolation would help here. There you go. Number two, really good access controls would be valuable as well. Number three, not using open source software where you shouldn't be using open source software. And then finally, I will admit this is one scenario where training might be beneficial to folks to go, hey, if you're an engineer and you get a potentially super interesting, super valuable job offer type thing, don't be a dumbass and click on that thing and follow them down the path because it's probably BS. So I bet if you did 15 seconds worth of research on whoever's sending you this job offer on LinkedIn, you could figure out that it's probably at least suspect. But we have to hope people do that. And that's a different story. All right. Well, more to come. It's about 30 minutes. I'm just getting back into the groove of things after the new year and all that. As always, if I can help with something, please reach out to me. Stay smart, stay safe, stay secure. I'll catch you on the next one.